If you're watching this, I'm assuming that you have some bad habits that have just sort of gotten out of control, almost as if they are beginning to rule your life. Maybe you've tried to change them. Maybe you've tried to eat better. Maybe you've tried to go to the gym. Maybe you've tried to stop snacking or stop scrolling late at night or whatever it is. But you inevitably find yourself back in that old pattern before you've even noticed. And today we're exploring why that change feels so hard and how psychology can help us to break through that invisible wall and make change easier. I'm Professor Alan Johnson, and this is The Thinking Life, where ideas meet everyday life for mind, work, and growth. A few years ago, I decided that I was going to become a morning person, which wasn't a natural state for me to be in. So I bought one of those sunrise alarm clocks, it sort of gets a little bit brighter. And I read a whole bunch about sleep schedules and I laid out my running clothes the night before. And I set a really ambitious plan for myself. I was going to wake up every day at 5:30 a.m. I was going to meditate, I was going to run, and I was going to journal. Great. For 3 days, that's exactly what I did. And then on the fourth day, so it was Thursday, I pressed snooze. And by the end of the second week of this new habit, I was back into my old rhythm. My brain and my body seemed to nudge me back to where it was comfortable, despite my best intentions. How familiar does that sound to you? Even when we have the best intentions, something doesn't seem to click. And that experience showed me something really profound. A habit change isn't just about planning or willpower. Habit change, real lasting habit change, is about understanding why the mind resists change in the first place and then finding ways to work with it rather than against it. If we don't understand why our mind is not allowing us to implement new, healthier habits, we're never going to be able to change that. So let's break this down into three big ideas that all seem to make habit change seem impossible. And then we'll see what we can do to break through that. The first one I wanted to talk about is something called the habit loop, which is something that B.F. Skinner and then more recently Charles Duhigg described as the loops that ultimately motivate and structure our patterns. We have a cue, we then receive we then complete a routine, and we then receive a reward. So this cue, routine, reward loop is something that underpins all of our behaviors surrounding habits because our brain absolutely loves efficiency. And once something that we do gets a reward, like comfort or dopamine or relief, whatever it is, our brain wires that into place. This is why you find yourself opening Instagram before you've even decided to. How many times has it happened? How many times have you found yourself on a time wasting app and you don't actually remember consciously even opening it up? Because what's happened there is the cue is boredom, or maybe even more simply, the cue is just downtime. Maybe you don't even let boredom begin to arise. Maybe just the notion of not having anything else to do for the moment is the only cue that you need. That then triggers the routine, which is opening the app and scrolling, which then gives you the reward, which is stimulation. These apps are absolutely designed to feed the reward centers of the brain. So instead of relying on sheer willpower to break that habit, instead of saying, I will not go into social media, I will not go into social media, or I will not snack, or I will not snack, or I will eat healthier, or whatever it is, instead of relying on willpower to break our habit, we need to identify the cue that is being activated and then replace the routine with something that is better. So, if you are scrolling because you are bored, experiment with replacing that with a different habit. Maybe breathing in and out for 5 times, having a glass of water, having a stretch, a nice healthy habit. This isn't about replacing it with a different unhealthy habit. It's about replacing it with a small, brief micro habit and then rewarding yourself for that. So, the first big thing that gets in the way of forming new habits is that our brain is looking for rewards, and it looks for rewards in the same way that it's got it from before. So, if we begin to train our brain differently, slowly over time, we begin to rewire it. There's another major block we need to contend with as well, something known as cognitive dissonance. When we try to change our behavior, our identity hasn't necessarily caught up to the new behavior. Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's say that we have a target that we are going to start going to the gym 3 mornings a week, and we are going to get healthy and fit. And this is our new habit. And that's fantastic. It's a really, really good habit to start. If our identity hasn't caught up with that yet, we are constantly going to be subconsciously pushing against it. So we might consciously be saying that I'm starting a new habit of going to the gym 3 mornings a week. But if our core identity and belief system is that we are a person who sleeps in late, that we are a person who does not go to the gym, that we are a person who does not look after our health and well-being, that habit will not last. This is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. That friction between something that we're trying to do and what we actually think that we are. And that mental discomfort was really going to begin surfacing there when we feel that our actions don't match our self image. What do you think happens when our actions don't match our self image? Well, our ego is going to try to get our actions to match our self image, not the other way around. So, to create better habits, it's not just about creating the habits, it's not about relying on willpower, it is about changing our identity as well. This is something that does take time. This is something we explore a lot in my online group coaching work. If that's something that interests you, or if you want to work on a one-to-one basis to explore this more, I'll pop some links below that you can explore, because rewiring that part of your brain to identify your new identity and then to be activating actions from your new identity is a process that takes time. But there's a little trick that you can use now. Begin to normalize the discomfort of cognitive dissonance. So when you feel that resistance, just tell yourself, this is my brain rewiring. It's not going to magically change things, but it's going to begin to acknowledge what is happening and acknowledging that that's fine. If you're experiencing a small amount of cognitive dissonance, that is fine for now. And bit by bit, over time, that will change. The final thing that I want to talk about here is very simply the energy problem. Your brain consumes over 20% of your body's total energy. So it wants to conserve as much of that as possible, which means resisting change. Forming a new habit requires energy from our brain. It's metabolically expensive. And that's why new habits feel really draining at first. But over time, they shift into autopilot, and then that begins to free up energy. So the way that we get around this, because it's always going to be metabolically expensive to train our brain to new habits, the way that we get around this is be strategic, not trying to overhaul everything at once. Instead, picking one small habit to focus on at a time, okay? Your brain will be able to energetically handle that one small habit. And do you know what's going to happen after that one small habit is completely implanted? After a couple of weeks, you move on to the next small habit. So if you want to go deeper into these practices, I will pop those links below for you, because we need to think of habit change not as a one-time magic pill that fixes everything. We are constantly reevaluating and optimizing our habits over time. But when we're doing that, we need to make sure that our ego and that our unconscious brain isn't getting in the way of that. And I would love to hear from you on this. What habit have you found hardest to change, and why has that been the hardest to change? Drop a comment below and let's compare notes on this. And if you found this video helpful, give it a like and subscribe. We do this every week. New ideas about the mind, work, and inner growth, and always takes the philosophical and psychological and makes it practical for your everyday. I'll see you next time.